All right, the early years at the Wright Patterson Air Force Base, U.S. Air Force National Museum. So they have a one-way in and a one-way out now because of the COVID. So here's a bunch of early engines. Pretty beastly. That one looks pretty insanely awesome. And this massive biplane. A Fiat A12 engine. There's tons of things hanging from the sky in here. Giant dirigible. This thing's pretty crazy looking. It's like a balsa wood glider. This is the 1909 military flyer. It's the Wright 1909 military flyer. And it looks like it had a 4-cylinder Wright engine with 30.6 horsepower with a maximum speed of 42 miles an hour. That thing is cooking. I don't know about you, but I don't think I would want to go on that thing. And the walls are lined with tons of info. There's a better shot of the dirigible. And some more biplanes. What we got here? It's a propeller blade that broke during the fateful flight, September 17th, 1908. Battery Selfridge, named in honor of First Lieutenants Thomas E. Selfridge, 1st United States Field Artillery. So it looks like this is a plane that went up and came back down as soon as it went up. Here's a little bit more of the technology. The chain drive system, the Wright chain drive system, and a pretty large engine sprocket. So looking at the picture, it looks like there was a bicycle chain, a propeller sprocket, an engine sprocket, and then a cross chain. Looks like something I could have built in the 70s as a kid with bicycle parts. And this is the drive shaft bracket. That is some Flintstones technology if I ever saw it. All right, here we are now with the J1. It's a World War I plane made by the Standard Aircraft Company. It's a 2-seat primary trainer used by the U.S. Army Air Service long before any kind of Air Force. At this point, looks like we start getting into some metal construction. Although the propeller's still wooden. Kind of interesting. Okay, I'm a little confused now. Aha. So I was wrong. Up above me is the J1. See the little arrow on the sign pointing upwards? So that is the trainer. This is a SPAD 5-6 VII. I suck at Roman numerals. So I stand corrected. This is the SPAD. Looks like something right out of Flying Circus, doesn't it? What do we have down here? That's a massive engine. The Curtiss V2-3 engine. Kind of beastly. Then we get over here, and we've got the Curtiss OX-5 engine. And this guy is a World War I Avro 504K. This thing's rather big. At least in comparison to the Spad. Looks like it's a lot longer, it's a lot taller. Looks like it's constructed better. And then here we have the Liron C9 engine. It's a slightly better shot of the blimp, or dirigible, whatever you want to call it. Now here's something a little interesting. This is a little something about the Red Baron. Baron Manfred von Richthofen. That's a little bit about his history. And this other picture right here, it looks like it says souvenir hunters stripping von Richthofen's Fokker triplane at an RAF aerodrome near Bertangles, France, April 22nd, 1918. So it looks like they are getting some souvenirs from the Red Baron's plane when they took him down. Interesting. And here's another shot here. And this is the Fokker DR-1 triplane, which was flown on various occasions by von Richthofen during World War I. And it goes on to say it was exhibited in a museum in Berlin in the 1930s, reportedly. Hitler refused to give permission for it to be moved to a place of safety during World War II, and it was completely destroyed by Allied air attacks on the German capital. So, if you ever wondered what happened to the famed Fokker DR-1 of the Red Baron, looks like the Allied forces took it out in World War II. There's an interesting piece of information I didn't know either. And here is supposedly the engine, which is an Uber-Russell UR2 rotary engine. It's a 110 horsepower engine, and it was the type that was used to power the Fokker DR-1 triplane. So this is pretty much the engine that the Red Baron had in his Fokker DR-1. Pretty cool stuff. All right, what do we have here? Here's another biplane of some sort. I like the little swirly thing on the tip there. That's kind of cool. What is this guy? This is a Newport 28. Maximum speed 122 miles an hour. Range is 180 miles. 2 Vickers .303 cal machine guns, and the engine is a Gnome 9N with 160 horsepower. You know what? I don't think I've ever seen this plane before, other than here. I've been here before, but I really didn't pay much attention to the biplanes the last few times I've been here. But now that I've been doing a lot more Flying Circus online, it seems these are kind of interesting to me now. All right, here's a little bit more about the famed Fokker DR-1. It had 2 7.92 millimeter Spandu light machine guns, 110 horsepower engine with a maximum speed of 103 miles an hour, had a range of about 185 miles, and its ceiling was a little under 20,000 feet. And as the arrow shows, it is hanging upside down from the ceiling, which is pretty cool. The hard part's just getting this in frame, but it looks like somebody's doing a barrel roll trying to evade. The fun part is holding your phone and trying to record this and not get dizzy while you're kind of looking away and looking at the phone and looking away. Alrighty, here is another very familiar face. If you know anything about World War I stuff, this is the ever so popular Sopwith F.1 Camel. Let's talk about the specs on this guy. Looks like it had 2 Vickers 303 cal machine guns. The engine had 130 horsepower with a maximum speed of 112 miles an hour, although it had a range of 300 miles and exactly 19,000 foot ceiling. So in the overall scheme of things, this thing had a little bit better range, although the maximum speed is close to the same as what the Fokker DR1 is, and the horsepower is just slightly higher. Let's maneuver around so we can get a better shot of this guy. But this, in addition to that, are 2 of probably the most popular and most noteworthy World War I planes out there. They're kind of the Chevy and the Ford of the World War I planes that are out there. That is the Camel and the Fokker DR1. All right, next up is the sounds of little children and the Halberstadt CLIV. Now they have this in Flying Circus as well, I believe. And this guy's technical specs are 1 or 2 fixed 9mm Spandau machine guns and 1 flexible Parabellum 9mm machine gun, anti-personnel grenades, and 4 or 5 22-pound bombs. The engine had 160 horsepower with a maximum speed of 112 miles an hour, with a range of about 300 miles and a slightly higher ceiling than the Fokker DR1 and the Sopwith Camel at 21,000 feet. Now this is also a 2-seater, so there's a guy that would sit in the back there, and as you see, there's a gun on a mount there that he can swing around and take shots at people. And he probably sat in the back seat there chucking grenades and bombs out at the same time. So I guess you could say this is probably one of the first bombers of World War I. There's a better shot at the gun back there. Zoom in a little. And notice the fancy paint job. Does that look kind of familiar? It almost looks like the terrain one would see over Europe at altitude. So at a glance, this pattern would help them blend in. Alrighty, next up is another later model SPAD. This guy here is the 1916 model. A new generation of German fighters threatened to win air superiority over the Western Front. French aircraft company SPAD responded by developing a replacement for its highly successful SPAD VII. Essentially, a larger version of the SPAD with a more powerful V8 engine. Now here's some of the technical notes. This guy had 220 horsepower. So when looking at these other guys over here, these guys all had what, about 112, something like that. This guy was cooking with 220. So, and it's a beast of a plane. And again, it's a later model. Pretty massive propeller. All right, next up is the Bug Bomb. Kettering aerial torpedo, 530 pounds with a maximum speed of 120 miles an hour and a range of 75 miles. This is a flying bomb. Kind of crazy.
Please maintain the proper social distancing of at least 6 feet while in line, and please wear a mask. Those visiting the WarGameGuru Cafe should use the main staircase or elevator in the entrance door. The Flying Cafe and Museum Gallery is closed at this time. Museum exit doors are located in the atrium at the end of the museum store. For your convenience, please shop early and throughout the day to avoid long queue lines at our museum gift shop.
Alrighty, so here's the later model Fokker. And this guy had two 7.92 span-down machine guns. We had 160 horsepower or 180 horsepower, either Mercedes or BMW engine, with a maximum speed of 120 and 124 respectively. However, the difference is with the Mercedes engine, the ceiling was limited to 18,000 feet. However, with the BMW engine, the ceiling was raised to 21,000 feet. And then here's a crazy engine from it. Or what is this? King Bugatti. No, this isn't the engine from this, but this is just another one they have on display. And this guy looks like it's got 410 horsepower. Holy crap. All right, here's a couple of the other later model planes they have in here, and this thing is massive. This guy here is the Caproni CA.36. Maximum speed of 87 miles an hour. Range of 372 miles, however. And it has about 150 horsepower water-cooled V6. It also has two Ravelli 6.5 millimeter machine guns and 1,764 pounds of bombs. So this is an Italian bomber. This might be something interesting to have in Flying Circus eventually. It's pretty massive. Looks pretty crazy. And then over here, we have the Lusac 11. Pretty long wingspan on this guy too. And this has a range of about 320 miles, 230 cal Marlin, 230 cal Lewis machine guns. Has the Liberty engine that has 400 horsepower with a maximum speed of 136 miles an hour. Now we're starting to get up there. And it also has a ceiling of 20,000 feet. Also, it says it can be up to 39,700 feet with a turbo supercharger. That's pretty impressive. So as we go on down the line, the horsepower, the range, and the speed of these guys really start to ramp up. And it looks like this is a two-seater as well. Notice the dual guns on the back, which are pretty cool on this guy. This one looks like it would be pretty formidable. All right, we're moving along here to the other side of the early years hangar here. There's a better shot of the dirigible up there. Over here looks like we have a PT-1 Trusty. Looks like a little guy. Maximum speed of 99 miles an hour, 13,000 foot ceiling, 180 horsepower engine. This is a training aircraft for the U.S. Army Air Service. And it's a pretty little guy in the overall scheme of things compared to some of these others. And then we come over here to this MB-2 that looks massive. I've never seen this, but the wingspan is just huge on this thing. Actually, here's something interesting. So, as we come on over to this side, the rest of the wing is folded back. So, it looks like this is an early carrier-based plane, or bomber in general, with a folding wing. That's pretty impressive. And look at the massive engines on this thing. So let's look at some of the specs on this guy. So it looks like it had a crew of 4 with a maximum speed of only 99 miles an hour, and 5 30 caliber machine guns, and a maximum load of 3,000 pounds of bombs, and had a range of 558 miles. So this is pretty much the U.S. Air Service's primary multi-engine bomber from around the 1920s. And this is one of the only left existing MB-2s in the world. Now look up in there, you can see right up into the cockpit. Hey, that's pretty cool too. It's kind of covered up, but it looks like that comes out so you can see right down below as well. Absolutely impressive. Oh, and look at the massive bomb underneath. Yeah, this thing is beastly. And then looking at some of the storyboards down here, it talks about battleship trials. So here's a bunch of the smaller planes that they have on display here. This one's pretty. This is a Curtiss P6E Hawk. Looks like a maximum speed of 204 miles an hour. 600 horsepower Curtiss engine with 2 30 cal machine guns. And it's stated here that this is from the interwar years. So my guess is this is at the end of World War I, going towards World War II era. And as you can see, the design looks to have changed too. This is starting to look a lot more like a warbird. I've always liked those cowlings over the landing gear down there too. Very impressive stuff. A real pretty plane altogether. And over here, this is a P-12E from Boeing. Another interwar years plane. Looks like it had a 500 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine, maximum speed of 189 miles an hour, with a range of about 570 miles. 2 30 cal or 1 30 cal and 150 cal machine guns with 244 pounds of bombs carried externally. Pretty impressive. Looks like one of the very first Boeing planes. And here's a shot of the Curtiss P-1 Hawk. And a little static display they have here. All right, this is going to be one of the many weird and experimental type planes that we're going to find here at the U.S. Air Force Museum. This here is called the K2-K3 Auto Gyro. And it looks like it mixes helicopter with fixed wing aircraft. Pretty interesting design. And again, it looks more like an experimental thing than anything that was ever really used for combat. But it's pretty crazy, and it's pretty impressive looking, because to meld a helicopter with a fixed-wing aircraft with a propeller like that is just nuts. So I don't know how well this ever did, and I don't think I've ever seen one outside of a museum like this. So pretty crazy plane, pretty impressive stuff, pretty cool to look at, and I'd love to have seen this thing fly. I think when I get home, I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to see if I could find any videos of this thing, because I want to see how this thing works, man. This thing is just crazy looking, isn't it? And the rotor blades are massive on this thing. All right, here's another one of those planes that when you look at it, you could start to see that this is really getting close to the more modern World War II era. And it's starting to look more like a military plane. I really love this design. These early designs, especially when you start looking at the bottom there with those like cowlings over top of the landing gear, and how that gives that little bit of a just cool aerodynamic look to it. And I think the paint job on this really sets it off rather well too. This is probably the most impressive plane that I've seen so far in this early years hangar. And this is called the Boeing P-26A pea shooter. And the armament was 2 30 caliber or 1 50 cal and 1 30 cal machine gun, 200 pounds of bombs, a 500 horsepower radial Pratt & Whitney engine, the Wasp, maximum speed of 234 miles an hour with a range of 360 miles. And I think of all the aircraft I've seen in this early years hangar so far, this has to be the one that has impressed me the most yet. And just look at it. It's absolutely beautiful. It almost reminds me of the I-16, about how short and wide it is, you know. But just a fantastic little plane. Really pretty, really impressive. It has that kind of styling, you know what I mean, of like the 40s and 50s cars even, you know, because look at the curves on it. Impressive stuff. All right, I'm going to blow through these last few aircraft because I've only got so much battery for this trip, and I really hadn't considered how much I would be using here to do this. So here we've got a B-10, which is a pretty impressive Martin plane. Looks like we got about 212 miles per hour, 330 cal machine guns, and 2,200 pounds of bombs. Pretty big. And again, as you look at this, you start to realize that, you know, this is kind of what they were starting to go towards with the World War II aircraft, where you stick a nose gunner in there, you've got a pilot sitting in the back, there's a bomb bay. Things are starting to look more like what we know the World War II aircraft to be designed like. And here we go with more interwar years. Up above us is the YPT-16. Now this is the kind of stuff that always impressed me too. When you start getting into chrome, that really, really impresses me. And then look at this guy here. More of that really cool stainless steel / chrome look to it. Yeah, this is absolutely beautiful. And I believe this is a Northrop A-17A attack aircraft. And this one's pretty damn big too. And again, as you see, we're starting to get into what looks like this could easily be a World War II warbird. This is where the design started to change. And over here, these last few in the early war hangar, above me is a P-19A Cornell. This guy. And over here in the really cool diorama one is a BT-14. And the diorama basically is depicting a training mishap. So it looks like the superior officer is chewing out this young pilot for having stuck his plane in the dirt head first. Pretty cool stuff. And then over here, this is the O-47B from North American. And again, another amazing chrome / stainless steel looking, shiny, awesome beast of a plane. And looking at the specs on this, this actually has a Wright engine in it, 1,060 horsepower with a maximum speed of 227 miles an hour and a ceiling of 24,000 feet. And it had one fixed forward firing 30 cal and one flexible 30 cal in the rear cockpit. So way back there, if somebody was on your 6, the guy in the back seat can help you take him out. Absolutely outstanding. And that pretty much wraps up the early years hangar. And it's really hard in one video to really show you how impressive and how big this hangar really is. And this is one of, I think, 4 hangars here at the Wright Patterson Air Force Base, U.S. Air Force Museum. And I almost forgot about this guy over here. This is literally the last one on the way out the door from this hangar. And I'll be the first to admit, I don't recognize this right away, but I found the sign and it looks like this is the de Havilland 82A Tiger Moth. Looks like you're going 104 miles an hour, a 14,000 foot ceiling with a range of about 300 feet in this guy. And this is the classic British trainer, and it came out around October 26, 1931. So this is what the British would train in prior to World War II. There's kind of a guy standing there, standby. You got the other British pilots sitting there, chilling out, waiting for the air raid siren to go off. Very cool stuff indeed. So that's it for the early years hangar.